Welcome UniVerse EDA customer. UniVerse 12.2.1 and some early UniVerse version can support EDA solution with MySQL Server. This video will explain it, how to work with MySQL on UniVerse 12.2.1, and also have a 2 demo to show you how Windows system and Unix system to work with MySQL. How U2 EDA driver work with other database. We already have some other EDA solution to work with SQL Server, Oracle, and DB2. On the latest UniVerse 12.2.1, 12.1.1, and some 11.3 version also can using EDA driver to work MySQL. So a little bit different on the Microsoft SQL Server. On Windows and Unix, there were a different solution. But on the MySQL solution, we're using COM driver we implement on Unix and Windows. So how you work on Windows environment? Basically, Windows will have one called libconf drv and dir on the Windows environment. On the Unix, also with similar driver called libconf driver.so. So for Windows environment, the ODBC driver is come from Microsoft ODBC Administrator. But on Unix, you need to additional to install UNIX ODBC driver. The driver will be libodbc.sh. So all the same thing to talk with the MySQL ODBC driver, then connect to MySQL Server. So before you want to implement this solution, you must have some MySQL Server on your environment. We start to support 5.6 version, but most of customers right now is running a MySQL Server version is 8.0. So pretty easy on Windows environment. You just get the MySQL ODBC driver, install it and set up the DSN, then you can work with the EDA data source. But on the Unix, little bit different. Unix, you need to install the UNIX ODBC driver. On Linux, it's pretty simple. You just run the command like a yum install -y UNIX ODBC-developer. They will install the UNIX ODBC driver manager. Also, you will require one MySQL ODBC driver for Linux. They have so many versions. You need to go to MySQL website to download a right version to work with your Linux or Unix environment. After you install it, you need to manually to create the ODBC DSN. There will be odbc.ini file. On the server side, on UniVerse server, you must have a license, EDA license. So you can run the UV region -z option to see the license information. You have a license or not. After you got the license, the next step, you need to set up the EDA config file. On Windows side, are pretty simple. You just using any kind of editor to create a 3 line. Very important to explaining you want to use MySQL. They call the driver name equal MySQL. Because we also support other database like a Microsoft SQL Server or some other database. So you need to specify which EDA driver you will be used. On Unix, you can manually create it like this, or you can run edasetup.sh script in the UniVerse bin folder. If you have any question or problem, you might want to enable EDA driver lock. Basically, you just change the lock level to a maximum number 8. They have a couple options to change it in the EDA configuration file. Then next EDA connection or EDA function will create a lock on your system. On the Unix, when you create the ODBC INI, so you can use an iSQL to test it. After you test the iSQL is working on your Linux environment, your next step you are using EDA Schema Manager tool to create the EDA data source. On Windows, it's pretty easy. You can get the user and part of the administrator group, so you can create the EDA data source without any problem. But on the Unix, most of the customer won't have a root user and password environment, so they just only have a regular user, and they try to create EDA data source, and then most of you got the exception error or permission error, because most of the system file is created by root. So if you don't have a root permission, you want to change it, you got a permission error. So in this demo, also provide one simple basic program. So when you only have a regular user, but you have a sudo to your system, then you can create a basic program and put it on the system, then change some parameter setting. Then you can use in the sudo root to create the EDA data source. After you create the EDA data source, then you can immediately to run EDA connect command on the UniVerse share to verify your setting. After you create the EDA data source successful, then you can go back to EDA Schema Manager tool to create a schema on your UniVerse file. Then you can convert the UniVerse file become MySQL Server table. So before you want to create the EDA data source, you must have DSN, MySQL DSN. So here just the example to create the ODBC DSN to connect to MySQL. But from MySQL 8.0 server, most of the server already SSL enabled by default. So if you don't know how to enable SSL or disable connect to your server, on the client side they have an option you can temporary to disable SSL mode option to disable, so you can continue to work with your EDA solution. So after you connect to EDA data source, then you can create a schema. Here just an example to create on the customer file, or right now convert to MySQL. So for my demo, I create a couple different temporary files, basically the same thing for customer. On Unix, I call customer Unix. on Windows called Customer Windows. And also on DSN setting, I already create using editor, VI editor to create an ODBC.ini file called Microsoft MySQL ODBC-8A DSN. On Windows called MySQL DSN. Just a very simple DSN, so I can do the testing on the next demo. So first, you must have MySQL environment on your system. So I already installed MySQL Server on one Windows environment. So I log in the root to create to go to MySQL Server. So from here, I like to know couple of the user I use from here. Call select the user -host from MySQL.user. So let's the sample user already set up on this MySQL server, and I also want to know what is the version on this environment. So on MySQL environment, they have a command to show you the SQL Server version. So I already to show you this one is installed MySQL Server 8.0.21 on this Windows environment. Also have a database. So I want to know what database already set it up on this machine. So they have a couple database set up, and I want to use in called EDA underscore UV database on this machine. So I want to use EDA UV database. So I switch the database to here. So right now I want to see which table already on this environment. So right now is no database on this MySQL. So next step, you will go to your UniVerse environment. So first step, you go on. I will show you on this Windows have a MySQL Server 8.0.21 installed on this Windows machine. Also have UniVerse installed on this machine. So next step, I want to see which UniVerse installed on this machine. So this one actually you can use in the bin/uv minus rev number to see get exact UniVerse version. Actually, it's UniVerse 12.2.1 implement on this version. I also want to make sure they have a license. So if you run called UV region -z option, they have an option called EDA option. Yes, so they have an EDA license on this machine. So next step, you need to create the particular the EDA config file. I already created, so I can type EDA. So on Windows, it's pretty simple. You make sure you create a 3 lines called driver equal ODBC and driver name equal MySQL. On this machine, you can set up the log level maximum to 8. So I already set up the EDA driver logging to equal 8. So let's just on Windows environment. On Unix, let's I have another Unix machine. So normally you want to see what UniVerse on this box. So So this UniVerse actually is Rocket Linux 8.7 version on this machine. So I also want to see what UniVerse on this machine. So it also is trapped to 1 UniVerse on this box. Also, I want to make sure they have license. So also have an EDA license on this box. And next step, it's very important to create the EDA config file. So I already created is the EDA config file. So I also, if you don't a brand new installation UniVerse, you don't have an EDA config file, but you can run the setup. I try to create a new one. So I already have one, so I can rename it. So right now it's no EDA config file. So I make sure I can run it from edasetup.sh. So this one will be ODBC. So it's MySQL. And using the default ODBC driver path. So after you run it, so it will create the EDA config file. Everything is by default. So on the server side, it's ready. So next step, we will go to the client side. On the client side, very important thing, you need to get the MySQL ODBC client. So on the ODBC client, you need to go to the website, let's call dev.mysql.com, to download the ODBC driver. So on the Windows, you choose Windows environment and to download the ODBC client. Right now it's 8.0.33. That's a Windows environment. If you run it on the Linux, for my environment, it's Red Hat Linux or Rocky Linux, basically similar. So you can download at least the MySQL ODBC driver. So after you download it, you need to put it on your UniVerse machine. So for next step, I will explain it to on Windows environment. So I already using remote desktop to put it here. Let's from here, and I already put the two MySQL ODBC client. So from here, I already here. You just MSI. You just install it to your Windows environment. So from this one, running its Microsoft ODBC DSN administrator tool, and from here you can create. I already create called MySQL DSN. So from MySQL DSN, and I can add the new one already created. So let's look like this. Or MySQL DSN, just the ODBC DSN, and I using the this actually connect to the sandbox by default, and I using the MySQL user EDA and password. Then I connect to my MySQL database. So after you set it up, then I can test it. So it should be successful. Yeah, it should be. Yeah, it's here. So it's success. So I create the one MySQL system DSN. So after you create the MySQL DSN, Then you can run EDA Schema Manager tool to create the EDA data source. So I connect to UniVerse. So first, you need to create the EDA data source. I already create called MySQL DSN. And basically, that's the EDA data source name. Then this one is ODBC, MySQL ODBC DSN. I use the same name. Then I need to choose com.-1f, and description doesn't matter. And I add the MySQL user and make sure it's connected. So I can set it up. Then if I want to set up another one, I can set up another one, EDA data source. So I can get MySQL DSN2. So I get the second one, but ODBC name is the MySQL DSN. Then driver, I choose the com, and this one doesn't matter. MySQL DSN2, and I need to add the new user, MySQL user password. And I need to test it. Successful. So that's a pretty easy to set up our EDA on Windows environment. So after I set it up, then I can convert it. Convert one. I already created one UniVerse file. I call customer Unix. So that's the call customer or this customer Windows. Right now it's on Windows environment. So I already created basically like this. Just the mapping order. Customer Windows file is the same customer file, but I using everything as default. So you will create a customer Windows as all single value file, single value data, and I create another one. And this one I intentional to change a little bit name for a meta value table name. So when I run it on Unix, the name will be not conflict each other on Windows and Unix. So after I set it up, so I can verify successful. The next, you can take a look. That's how it work. And this one, basically, I just want to convert it. It is the only 12 records from. Should be pretty easy to convert. Is the 12 record successful? So after convert it, and we can go back to MySQL environment. So let's just MySQL environment, so I can show tables. So they already have customer win and customer win underscore orders underscore MV. That is the EDA. So after you create it, so let's on Windows environment. So list customer win or uppercase. So is the data already stored on the MySQL database. So Windows is pretty simple. Then next, I'll try to explain on Unix. So from Unix, a little bit different. So Unix, that's the Unix environment. First, you need to get the MySQL ODBC driver. I put it on this folder. So after you get the driver, I already couple MySQL driver like this. So I upload MySQL ODBC driver for Linux. So after I put here, so first step, you need to install the ODBC driver manager. So you can use in the command like this. So I already, yeah. Basically, you just need to run yum install -y unix ODBC. I already installed it, and so they just told me already installed it. So after you install it, you will install the odbc.sh in the user lib64 folder. Also, next step will be install MySQL ODBC driver. So that's the another command to install it. Pretty simple, pretty quick. And this one, it will install the MySQL ODBC driver in the lib64 folder. So after you install the UNIX ODBC driver manager and MySQL ODBC driver, then you should be see the edaconfig.ini file. Oh, should be another one. So you will install the MySQL. Basically, you will install these two options on the odbc-inst.ini file. So it will include Unicode and ANSI. For UniVerse, we support ANSI only, so not Unicode. So you need to using this MySQL ODBC driver option. So after you set up the odbc-inst.ini file, then next will be edaconfig.ini file. So I already create basically using the syntax. You can go to website or looking my video, the comment. You will see all the detail you can change. So basically, I'm using the NC driver and my MySQL server, then my username, password, and connect to the database. So after I set it up, this one, I need to check my settings correct, so I can run MySQL.v. So I can using check this EDA U2. So it's correct. The MySQL environment already set it up. So after I set it up, I want to create the EDA data source. So next step, I like to list Windows, disconnect. So I connect to So next step will be create my EDA data source. So create test EDA DS test EDA data source. So you will see a lot of error because I log in this regular user to my Unix environment, but I don't have a root permission. You will get the permission error. So next step, I already explained it using other way to create the DSN. So next I'll be I have a multiple test program, AE BP. EDA DS2. So I can using this simple basic program, because this one I log in is root, sudo root. So I can try to MySQL DSN2 using the basic program. So if I do this, so it already create MySQL DSN2 EDA data source. So how can I know it's working? So I can using EDA connect the EDA MySQL DSN2 with EDA U2. Yeah, it's successful. If password setting anything is wrong, it will show you the error. So after you create it, then you can go back to here to go back to the UniVerse EDA schema tool, connect to your UniVerse. So after this, I can refresh. See, I already got another one. So this one I also can test from here now. So it's successful. So after I successful, then I can using this EDA data source to convert your UniVerse file. So for example, I have one file. I can choose called customer Unix. So I can create EDA mapping. I already have one. It's fine. I can create another one. I can use my another one. They have a couple DSN option. I can use in my SQL. I just created, so I can map in. So basically, this the new customer Unix and orders MV. I just created, and I can check, verified, success. So I can convert to EDA convert. So this one has failed. I go back to look at. I can choose another one. Maybe I can choose customer. I can choose MySQL DSN. Next one. Success. Convert. Yeah, successful. So if I go back to look MySQL, show tables. So I get another two table. One is called customer table and orders, and that's called MV. So basically, this table it just come from my Unix UniVerse server. So hopefully you can enjoy this demo. So I hope you can learn it my UniVerse EDA solution with MySQL.